World of Tanks might seem like it's quite an easy game from the get-go, but in fact there's a lot of reasons why most people find it very difficult to do well in this game. So today's video is going to look at exactly how you can improve as a player, as well as learn a few tips and stuff that I did so you don't have to do them, and hopefully don't have to spend as much time as I did grinding your head against the brick wall and not get sucked into the black hole that is World of Tanks. One of the biggest reasons, and I guess number one, that we can really talk about in today's video, and something that I found made a remarkable amount of difference in my own ability to play the game and how to get better, and by no means am I telling you that I'm the best player in the world, I'm far from it, but at least I've been able to improve drastically in a very small amount of games, being about 4,000 I think at the time of this recording, which is relatively decent and about a 57.5% win rate for those of you wondering. But as far as going down the first route, we of course decided to go down some of the generic tank lines that actually may not be the best way of going, and in fact some of the most popular and well-known tank lines that you might see within the game are not necessarily the best ones for people to be able to get better. And unfortunately, because they're so popular and well-known throughout I guess history and stuff like that, that people will blindly go into these tank lines thinking that they're going to be the best ones because they know the tanks, but often this isn't the case, and they'll choose tank lines that either are popular, like I've just said, B, either have a huge gun and therefore must be overpowered, things like the Jaegeru and of course the FE 4005. They see, oh, this does the most damage in the game, and go blindly down the tech tree, leading them to feel horrible when they actually get the vehicles and realise that they're not the easiest to play, and they certainly aren't as rewarding as you might think playing these vehicles. But that's where, of course, today we want to focus on some of the tanks that I think are worthwhile playing and that everyone should at least attempt to try if you have very little experience, and even some of the more experienced players who maybe are struggling to reach their higher win rates will benefit a lot from, and that is of course the 4 tanks, or there's plenty of them in the game, but the 4 tanks that we're going to suggest today are, number one is the Super Conqueror. This teaches you not only how to place yourself, because they're not the fastest tank in the game, you'll be able to reposition all around the map, but you won't be able to do it too quickly, so you will learn how and when you need to push into various different positions. It also has a brilliant turret, it has the ability to have a really accurate gun, which helps out when your aim might not be that good, which is definitely something that people could improve on. And of course with the RNG that we have in the game, it's nice to have a more accurate heavy tank that is a bit more forgiving and has the DPM to get out as many shots as possible, so that you can learn where you're hitting opponents, and if you're picking tanks with super high alpha damage, you're only firing like 10 rounds in an entire game, even in a winning game where your team might be able to come away with a significant amount of time within the game, not just a steamroll of 15-0 or something like that, but where you have a prolonged period of time, you may only get 10 shots out in some of the high alpha damage tanks, whereas in the smaller alpha damage, the medium tanks, the heavy tanks, you're going to be able to get more, which is where the Super Conqueror comes in, and where all of these tanks really kind of feature in that range, and the Super Conqueror does that really well. It's a nice tank to get into, and the whole line leading up to it is really good as well. It just has a lot of different things that you can learn from. Some of the tanks are a bit annoying to play, especially when you're playing them stock, but once you get past that, you'll find you get into the groove of playing them. The Conqueror at tier 9's absolutely amazing, and just in general very nice line to play, very rewarding to play, and really good for learning the game. Next one is of course the E50. Now this is a combination of both armor, mobility, and a decent gun as well, and when you combine all of those things, as we said previously, it makes it a very nice and enjoyable experience, except this one has more speed than you will see with the Super Conqueror, which makes that kind of hybrid between switching from a heavy tank to a medium tank a little bit easier, where you can use some of the tips that you've learned from side scraping and stuff like that on a tank like this, without having to play like a slow, super sluggish tank like the Maus or the E100, which might be able to bounce a hell of a lot more shells, but they're not particularly the most meta, and you'll be finding yourself feeling worse for wear, especially when you're newer to the game. But of course, a very enjoyable experience, and I think everyone should at least try and go for the E50 if you're interested in playing the game. But then we have the IS-7. This is a really nice tank as well. It gives you that idea of how to go hold down in positions where maybe you don't get the gun depression, because not every tank has 10 degrees of gun depression like you see with the British tanks. And so you have to be able to learn those positions where you can use hold down tactics. And if you do that, you will genuinely get better, because you will know much more positions than what you will see if you're just playing tanks with gun depression. And of course, when you're grinding through various different tanks, or you're coming up against tanks like this, you will learn a lot more than you would if you were just playing any old tank. So I feel like the IS-7 is a nice little hybrid between having the speed, the armor, and also not having all of the best things in the game, but is kind of a nice one to play. You could swap it out for the 277 as well. Both are pretty good tanks, and they're definitely worth playing at some point, especially in this early stages of the game, because they just feel really nice to play. And then the last one is the E5. This is probably more of a controversial one, but I feel like the E5 is a very, very good tank when in the right hands, and it was also a brilliant way to learn. It's one of the tanks that I personally, when I first started playing World of Tanks, went down, and it just improved me massively as a player, because you don't get that let off that some of the other vehicles will give you in terms of its armor, but you also get the advantages of having that fast fire rate. You have a solid turret, you're relatively fast, not the fastest, but it just gives you that whole round nature that is very good for developing all of your kind of skills within World of Tanks, which is brilliant. And therefore, you know, you're not just getting thrown into game after game where you feel like you're not doing anything, but at least you have a chance in something like this, and it just helps you improve. You don't get stuck in this rut of playing the same, like, pretty annoying tanks to play as a brand new player, or someone with less experience, or just someone trying to get better. You're playing the constant same old tanks and feeling like you're not getting anywhere, whereas these tanks just open it up a bit more and open you up to new situations and the ability to reposition, that sort of thing, without feeling like you are a paper tank that gets punished every single time. So really good tanks, at least for me personally, that I feel like everyone can learn for. Are they the most meta tanks in the game? Not necessarily. Some of them are very good for sure, but yeah, I feel like they're very good for early game and players who want to learn how to improve a little bit faster than everyone else. Now, that isn't the only thing, and the next bit is making silver, and of course avoiding premium consumables. Everyone ends up falling into this trap. It's one of the most infuriating things about the game, and you see them everywhere. They're usually in the comment section of basically any content creator. You see them in the comments on any of the What Replays sites. And they are the people that genuinely think that apparently if they fire only exclusive premium, or they use premium consumables, you're somehow paying to win. Now, for me personally, silver is something that even if you pay to win, it's ridiculously expensive, so no one's going to do it, because paying for silver in this game is absolutely cracked, and you're going to spend hundreds, if not thousands of pounds trying to get that silver, whereas you could just actually play some premium tanks and save your bank account and yeah, get better at the game at the same time. So, of course, getting the silver and paying for some premium ammunition is something that's really important. And to kind of counter all of the people that are complaining about premium ammunition, etc., it's annoying we have to do it. I agree. It is annoying that it is a super expensive round in the game, and therefore, you know, Wargaming can sell silver to people who want to spend it, which makes it difficult for players that don't want to spend ridiculous amounts of money on silver. But there are ways of kind of countering it. You can play frontline when it's available to earn hundreds of thousands of silver a game. You can use, of course, premium time. It is annoying to have to pay for it, but then again, it's a free game. So I feel like premium time is something that I am willing to pay every single year, and it gives you 50% extra silver, and effectively you earn 50% more, which means you can spend 50% more for the same results. And it's just a nice way of saving yourself a ton of silver rather than complaining about it. It's only something like a beer every month, so I don't think anyone should really be complaining about it, especially if you're getting, you know, out like 10s or 20 hours of enjoyment out of playing the game in that month. But that's not the only thing, is that By not firing silver and firing premium rounds, what you end up doing is you end up falling into the trap of how come I can't do more damage, how come I can't get more games where I feel like I'm top of the team constantly. Well, a lot of the time is that sometimes you do actually need premium rounds, and people who, take this moral high ground of never firing a premium round ever, of course, will end up just doing worse, because unfortunately you do need to use it, especially in tanks with very little standard penetration, and the premium penetration on some vehicles is similarly as bad. So you want to make sure that you take at least a few premium rounds every single game, and if you feel like it's a bit of a risky situation, just load the premium, and guess what? You're going to have a much better way of dealing with some of the tanks. You're not going to get taken out. Maybe you survive an encounter that you wouldn't have before, which means that then you get to go on into the later stages of the game where you might pick up multiple free shots of damage. You're dealing more damage in general, and you're going to be able to earn more silver in your games. And in fact, sometimes you'll earn way more silver when firing premium ammunition than if you were to not fire it and end up getting taken out super quickly, because you just keep bouncing off of things. And yes, there's a thing for saying learning the weak points, but at the end of the day, on some of the more recent premium tanks that we've been seeing, even the weak points aren't able to be penned with standard ammunition at all. And in fact, yeah, sometimes you just have to load premium if you want to pen something, which is not what we want to see in the game, but it is a truth of the game, and that's why a lot of the top players end up not only playing with premium ammunition, but they are also being able to use it effectively. And they don't use it all of the time, maybe the very top level, just because it is better in most situations. But yeah, it is not a guarantee that you have to play it and pay it to be able to do well, but it is an advantage, and I want to get that out of the way because it is a big black hole. People always go down it, and unfortunately it will stop you from getting better because you don't have as much time in the game, because you get taken out quicker because you're bouncing. But other than that, super simple way of actually dealing with it. Just take some and use it when you feel like you can't pen something. Other than that, getting scared in games or putting pressure on exactly the best spot in your games. Now, this is something that is very, it sounds abstract, it sounds like it's a weird kind of mix of, getting scared in your games and putting pressure on exactly where I should be going in the game that's going to be the best spot. Well, often a lot of the best players, they don't have to necessarily think about where the exact best spot in the game is, because they've had the experience of just being able to learn where typically the best spots are on each of the maps, depending on various different scenarios. Because when you've played 100,000 games of World of Tanks, you probably know how a game is going to go. You've probably seen the scenario before, you know how it's most likely going to end and where you found the best spots. Now, when you're playing as a new player or someone that's trying to improve, a lot of the time you're thinking, where should I go? Where should I do this? How should I do this? And by the time that you've actually thought about where you should go, you've sat in the same position for the entire game and not done anything. And that doesn't even give you the opportunity to learn where a bad spot is and where a good spot is. And I'm not just saying YOLO through the middle of the map when you don't know what you're doing, but just make a commitment to a flank that you think is decent. If there's a few teammates on a flank and you feel like the numbers aren't just crazy, where there's like 10 tanks against 2, or maybe it's 5 tanks against 3 and you could be the 4th tank over there, take the initiative and actually go there, help out your team, and you never know, you might actually win the flank and end up winning the game because of it. And of course, the more you do that, the more you kind of experience you get in doing those situations, and you're just going to get way better at being able to choose where and when to go, and rather than just sitting around and whining about how I don't know where to go, just make a commitment. You'll learn a lot more, and it's something I did personally to be able to kind of get a lot better in World of Tanks in a very short period of time, at least compared to some other people who have been playing this game for hundreds of days. So yeah, that's one thing that I would recommend to people who I liked, and of course people who even I wouldn't like, I would probably recommend the same thing. So either way, yeah, hopefully you guys will kind of understand my drift there, and it is something that kind of everyone gets drawn into and stuff like that, and it's kind of expected. Everyone tries to do it because, you know, hey ho, you don't want to be crap, you don't want to make a bad decision, but it's the bad decisions that you actually learn from on this game, and if you're not making any bad decisions and you're just sitting around, then every game you're making a bad decision and you're not even learning from it. So That's my 2 cents on that. Hopefully it doesn't come across as like I'm high or mighty. I don't want to do that. I'm just simply saying this is my experience and hopefully you'll learn from it. Maybe you won't. Maybe it won't help you at all. But if it does help you, I would greatly appreciate a like. But more importantly, if you're interested in learning a bit more, then this next one is going to be an interesting topic, and that is blaming your team. This is something that literally, it's so hard not to do, but it is one of the key things that the top players will not do, because the thing is, when you start blaming your team, you take credibility, or at least the kind of, I guess, fault of your own gameplay out of the equation, and now it's just your team's fault. When in reality, you could have probably done a lot better in the games that you're blaming your team, and therefore, you know, at least then if you recognize that, oh, maybe I actually did play a little bit bad in that game. Yes, the team didn't help, but maybe if I'd played a different way, I could have won that game. Maybe I could have helped the team a little bit more, then they would have been able to help me. And if you keep just blaming the team every single game, which is literally probably 80% of players, if not more, blame the team in some way, then yeah, I think you'll learn a lot more, and of course you won't be toxic, which is brilliant, because people might actually want to help you if you're kind of trying to actually learn the game. And of course, yes, teams can be awful. I'm not going to say that they aren't. Some teams are absolutely horrendous and you're going to end up being shafted by them, but at the same time, yeah, you can learn how to not get triggered at them and just learn from the mistakes that you might have done, but also what your team have done, and therefore you're just going to get better way faster than all of them. And there's a reason why the top players don't just rage in the chat every single time that they get taken out by an enemy opponent, and why they come top of the team every game. It's no coincidence that they're, you know, being critical of their own gameplay as well as the team as well, because you can learn from them too. But that's just 4 things that I felt like I think held back a lot of players in World of Tanks. It's a very difficult game. It's very difficult to pinpoint exactly what every single player needs to do to get better. Sometimes there are various different roadblocks to stopping you from getting better, whether that's your confidence in your own gameplay, whether it's you're just constantly being critical of others but not yourself, whether that's you've picked just a terrible tank and therefore you're just not doing well because nobody really does well in that tank. Or maybe it's as simple as you just haven't heard the advice, or maybe you just don't want to improve at all and you just want to be a casual player, which is absolutely fine, and it's probably most people in the game. But if you are here and you're wanting to get better, then hopefully the videos that I'm doing and the analysis, the replays, etc. will help you out, or at least you'll get some sort of entertainment. Maybe you just think I'm a complete idiot, and of course you're welcome to do that, so feel free to hit the like button, dislike button, whatever you want to do, but yeah, it would be greatly appreciated your time in this video. And if you've made it this far, check out this video on screen, which is the best tips that I did to improve at World of Tanks. So yeah, hopefully you enjoy that one if you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you there. Goodbye.